August 27th, 2020. Hurricane Laura made a catastrophic landfall in Louisiana. Over 80 people lost their lives in the storm, with over $23.3 billion in damages. Hurricane Laura proved how devastating the 2020s decade has started out. This begged the question, with a major hurricane affecting America, will there be another one? And what if it strikes a much, much poorer region like Central America? October 29th, 2020. The National Hurricane Center monitored a tropical wave heading across the Lesser Antilles. By the next day, on October 30th, the NHC put the NVS at a high level of risk of development. And on the next day, October 31st, at 1800 UTC, Tropical Depression 29 formed. As heading into the morning hours of November 1st, the NHC named it Eta, the 7th Greek later. And Eta was the storm that tied the record with 2005's hurricane season. The storm system was 105 miles south of the Dominican Republic. So there you have it. One tropical storm heading on its way to Central America. More specific, the poor countries of Nicaragua and Honduras. So the NHC put up hurricane watches for the area. While Nicaragua and Honduras were getting ready for the big storm, Eta reached hurricane status at 600 o'clock UTC November 2nd, around 310 miles south of Grand Cayman. This wasn't a good sign for Central America was hoping for. The hurricane watches had to be upgraded to hurricane warnings. But what good does a warning have on people who don't want to leave their own home and their family behind? But worse was coming. Hurricane Eta developed in ion satellites, and the new observations showed Eta became a high-end Category 2 hurricane, thanks to the 86-degree weathers. Eta was free to use the waters to her own power. So as you expected, Hurricane Eta exploded in intensity, becoming a violent Category 4 storm, with maximum wind speeds of 150 miles per hour on November 3rd. However, the storm was likely much stronger, like a Category 5 hurricane. But we'll never know because the hurricane hunters couldn't get there to bring us more accurate observations of the storm. But that's the least of concern, as the hurricane rating only tells us how strong it is. It doesn't help people affected by the storm, which the devastation was coming. And it was starting to be felt in Colombia, of all places. The islands of San Andres were actually in the way of Eta's severe path. Flooding of the islands took place, and damages totaled up to 777,000 USD, and 2 people were injured to the storm. As Eta approached closer, it thankfully weakened due to an eyewall replacement cycle by only 10 miles per hour. By the end of November 3rd, at 21,000 UTC, Eta made its devastating landfall 15 miles south-southwest of Puerto Casbes, Nicaragua, with peak wind speeds reportedly at 140 miles per hour, which is a problem. You know what else is a problem? Storm surge. The waves of the storm surge reach up to 33 feet in some locations. With all that, the onslaught of Eta's wrath was felt over Central America.
You were standing in the wake of devastation, when you were waiting on the edge of the unknown.
Starting in Nicaragua, at a school, 215 people were sheltering from the storm. Eta's winds ripped 10 sheets of metal off the school's roof, which had to be terrifying. Despite this damage, no one was injured or no one died in this storm, which was a miracle. But the rest of Nicaragua wasn't so lucky. 2 people were tragically killed by a mudslide. Were the first deaths of this storm. These 2 deaths occurred in Bonanza while they were working in the local mine, and a reported $178 million of damages were through poor Nicaragua country. But that's only Nicaragua. To the country up north, in Honduras, catastrophic flooding was reported. Over 80% of the agricultural sector was reportedly lost. 457 homes were destroyed. Roads throughout the country were washed away. In El Progreso, at the prison, a wall collapsed, which led to the evacuation of 600 inmates. Throughout the devastation, an economic loss of $5 billion. To not try and leave you totally depressed, I decided to not include how people died, and only the survival stories. Starting with one, a ferry that was filled with 300 people was rocked by waves and battered with heavy winds. Despite this, nobody died on that ferry, and 600 fishermen were all at sea when the storm started. They were all believed to be lost at sea, but by some miracle, they all returned to the shore of Honduras. With Ada ramming into the land with no water, the storm thankfully weakened substantially to a tropical storm at 1200 UTC on November 4th, and 12 hours later, it weakened to a tropical depression and moved towards Guatemala. The country was absolutely flooded, with over 60% of some cities being covered in water. More tragically, a mudslide near San Cristobal Verapaz buried 150 homes, and 100 people were being buried. 2 days after the searching started, they stopped because it was no use. 90-60 were reported missing throughout the country, and throughout the country, 60 people died, while $386 million of damages throughout the country. While the heart of the storm was in Nicaragua, during this time, Panama, Costa Rica, and El Salvador lost $27.5 million and the deaths of 22 people, 19 of which were in Panama, despite being 2 countries below landfall. As Ada was moving north, the rain band struck Belize and Mexico. 27 were killed in Mexico, and the rivers in Belize rose to 8.8 meters, or 29 feet for us Americans. The storm was moving away from Central America, where the worst of the storm was over. With damages over $6 billion and 165 dead, this is the worst hurricane Central America witnessed since Mitch back in 1998. After the storm, assistance was reached by the Red Cross and other countries. Ada then strengthened back into a tropical storm on November 7th and was moving northeast toward its next target, Cuba and the Cayman Islands. The damages were thankfully less severe. However, in Cuba, the floods were so bad that 25,000 people had to evacuate their area. After Ada's landfall in Cuba, the storm moved west through the Straits of Florida. Doing so, Ada made its third landfall in the Florida Keys, where the home of the Miami Dolphins, tighten up by the way, the very own stadium was flooded, where during that time, because of COVID, one of Florida's largest testing centers. It was flooded due to Ada's heavy rains. During Ada's reign of terror, only 1 person was injured. But Ada had other plans. As Ada entered the Gulf of America, or Mexico, it did a loop, heading towards Florida again. After the loop, it became hurricane strength. Thankfully, Ada reached back to a tropical storm. Ada made its final landfall north of Cedar Springs, where 1 died, and $1 billion of damages. After Eta exited Florida, it finally turned post-tropical, where the worst of Eta's United States damage occurred. About 11 people tragically died in North Carolina, and damages of $20 million occurred. Finally, Eta dissipated, ending the storm that killed 189, made 120 go missing, and the storm that did $7.24 billion in damage. After the storm, the United States recovered swiftly, along with Cuba and the Cayman Islands. Nicaragua and Honduras gained supplies from foreign countries willing to help out. And just like that, the storm was over. The 2020 Atlantic hurricane season was the most active on record. After Eta, two more storms formed. Tropical Storm Theta, the 8th Greek letter, was the record breaker, while Iota, the last storm of the season, became the strongest storm of the season. And Central America wouldn't be spared.
You were standing in the wake of devastation, when you were waiting on the edge of the unknown, and with the cataclysm raining down, insides crying, save me